G'day and welcome to another episode here at the Hidden Why podcast. Great to have you with me today. This is episode 1150. Yo! Today's guest is Dr. Laney Knowlton. She's a marriage and family therapist and she's also a clinical sexologist. And today we're talking all things relationships, the importance of relationships, the breakdown in societal connections that we're experiencing and why, from her opinion, that's happening. We talk about problematic sexual behaviours, how to unpack these things in our relationships, and some tools to manage these conversations in our relationships as well. Really powerful conversation, guys, an enjoyable one, somewhat an uncomfortable one, but I think a conversation that we should bring into our daily dialogue a little bit more. So I hope you enjoyed it. We'll check in at the other end. Hey, Laney, welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. Great to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thank you for the invite.
This could be a very interesting topic.
Always interesting.
I don't know where we're going to take it, but there's so much in relationships. So I guess that's the broader theme that I want to focus on today, relationships, connection. I believe it's paramount to living a happy and fulfilled life.
Absolutely, I would agree with that.
And you've been working in this field for a long time. You're a family and relationship therapist and what did you say, clinical sexologist?
Yep, that's what my PhD is in.
Clinical sexologist. So just explain to myself, for the viewers' benefits as well, what that is exactly.
So a degree in clinical sexology looks at sex and your relationship to it.
Mm-hmm.
And because my original license and degree are in marriage and family therapy, to me, an integral part of that is sexual relationships. And I also specialize in problematic sexual behaviors, betrayal, infidelity, and sexual abuse. So it made sense to me that I should get a doctorate in clinical sexology. Because if I want to know what I'm talking about, that one fit the best.
Yeah, fair enough too. Makes sense. And you've got a book out, Healing from Betrayal, Infidelity, and Problematic Sexual Behaviors. And that's just really a guide to, I guess, going through the trauma. I know you've got a 3-step sort of system that you've created going through that. Just walk us through that quickly.
So I found when I started doing the certifications that I have, the trainings that I have in the different areas, that one of the things that I saw was that there was a pretty big division between the different parts of the field. So the people who are trained to treat problematic sexual behaviors usually don't have a whole lot of training on treating betrayal, don't have a whole lot of training on relationships, and don't have training on healthy sexuality. Those who are trained to treat the relationships, like marriage and family therapists, we had one class on like sexuality throughout the lifespan, and that was it. There was no training on infidelity. There was no training on problematic sexual behaviors.
Right.
There was no training on I understand sexual abuse may be a very specialized part of the field, but to me it's such a common part of the human experience. And studies have shown that couples who present for therapy, the most common reason, which is more than half of them, present for infidelity. And so I feel like that would be important. But sex therapists aren't taught necessarily to treat betrayal or relationships or problematic sexual behaviors. And I feel like they're all connected. So I connected all of them.
What's the difference between like problematic sexual behaviors? Maybe we can define what that is as opposed to infidelity.
So infidelity is usually a type of problematic sexual behavior. Problematic sexual behaviors are romantic or sexual behaviors that are causing problems for you, people you're connected to, or your relationships are incongruent with who you are.
Okay, so problematic sexual behaviors within the relationship causing pain for one party or the other, or both, or?
And it may not be in relationships. It can be in relationships, but I have folks who will come to me and say, hey, I'm really struggling with compulsion in this area. I'm doing this more than I would like to, or I'm not being able to do this. Causing problems for me. So I go with a very generalized term for problematic sexual behaviors because I think they differ depending on each person, each relationship, every single individual.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's such a part of the human condition, right? Sexual behavior.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And everyone differs as to how that looks and feels to them. And I guess that's a large part to do with like their personality type, their upbringing and all that sort of thing as well. I don't really understand it enough.
I would think so. A lot of times the upbringing has more to do with shame related to sexuality than it does actually
Uh,
connecting to yourself and who you are intrinsically and authentically. That's what I found. Um, so I think we're taught we're not supposed to be things, or we're taught we're supposed to think one way or the other, or we judge ourselves or other people for things based off of things we go through in childhood. Maybe there, I am biased because people come to me because of problems. They don't
yeah,
come to me because everything's going really well. So I suppose if you have a really healthy foundation, and I have a chapter in my book, chapter 16 is on parenting. So it's on how do you talk to your kids about sex and how do you break intergenerational patterns related to shame. And so if you grow up in a household where there's not sexy, healthy conversation about sex,
yeah.
then I would think you may not have as much shame around it. But a lot of societies have shame connected to it, even if the household that you're in doesn't necessarily teach it.
Yeah, is that like I talked to my mum and sort of her generation, for women in particular, there was a lot of shame around sex and it was just the thing you don't talk about and do and not supposed to enjoy. And I think that's changed quite significantly nowadays, for younger women. But um, I mean, is that just dinner table conversations and that piece, you say it's still a bit of a thing to be ashamed of, your sexuality?
I think in general, we don't talk about sex very often. I
Yeah.
think it's changing. But I
Hmm.
know even like for social media videos, I have to edit the word sex if it's in the captions, or they block my video so people can't see it. And when I talk to people about it, I try to talk about it in a very natural way, and we're just having conversations about it. But I was at a conference last week, and in my presentation, one of the things I brought up, which I saw people nodding to, was like females will put tampons or pads, menstrual pads, underneath other items in their shopping cart. And I said, "Are you like?" When we do that, we're afraid of people knowing we have uteruses. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't even indicate sexual activity. It just indicates biological
Function.
makeup. So it's an interesting thing to have shame around.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like buying toilet paper almost. Some people have
Yep.
shame about, seeing, that's what we all do. So, um,
Hmm.
I get it. So let's go back more broadly, I guess, into relationship formats because what I see in the world right now is this massive change in society and how relationships exist. And I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing. For me, it feels more so a bad thing. Like there's just a breakdown in connection and relationships. And I don't know if that. I mean, you said there's a big part of it probably to do with sexuality and maybe infidelity and betrayal and problematic sex behaviors. But that couldn't be all the picture.
Oh, no. To me, there is a huge disconnect in our ability to connect to other human beings
Uh-huh.
in general. I think Esther Perel has a book called The State of Affairs. Actually, the one before that would be Mating in Captivity. And to me, that addresses this more fully. Our worlds have changed. So we bring in the internet, which we're not even able to have this conversation without the internet.
Yeah,
You're, I don't know how many thousands of miles away from me, but the other hemisphere, the other side of the globe, because I'm in North America and you're in Australia.
yeah,
And so we wouldn't even be able to have this conversation without progress along those lines. However, that also means that we don't get to know each other the same way we used to. That the people next door to us, we may not have the same connection we used to when you grew up in the same town and you stayed there and you had people who had known you for years and years and years and
mm,
you formed this community. And now we move much more frequently. We don't necessarily stay at the same job. And I think our interpersonal dynamics are impacted by that as well.
yeah.
So our relationships, and to some extent, and I think I can't remember if this is in Sarah Pearl's book or if this I saw her speak in like 2014.
What's her name, sorry?
And so this was Esther, which is spelled like Esther in the Bible, but she's Belgian, so it's pronounced
Uh-huh.
Esther. Last name Perel, Perel.
Perel. Okay. Yep.
Hmm. And she talked about how we were looking for. It used to be that marriage was something that was more of a um, like it had to do with land and it had to do with passing it down to our children and being able. It was an agreement, not a love, as in this is the person that is
Mm.
going to be my everything, not the soulmate conversation.
Right.
And with society shifting, with us moving more and more, we look for somebody who is our soulmate, who will be our everything, which is not possible for any human being. But
Not
I think
possible?
also I don't think it's possible. I think you
Hmm.
can't fill you can't fill somebody else's soul completely.
Yeah.
I think you need, my rule of thumb is you need five people in your, I call it superhero squad, but your support system. You need other people to talk to. So on the off chance that like I'm in a
Right.
really salty mood and my husband needs to talk to somebody, if he and I get in a fight and he might need to process it with somebody else, I might need to process it with somebody else. I need to have other people in my life that I talk to as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So not in a polyamorous way. Polyamory is absolutely a valid relational orientation. But what I'm saying is you need other people in your life. Your significant other cannot be your everything.
Right.
Just impossible for a human.
So the idea of this soulmate being that it's the one person that you can share everything with is kind of ludicrous. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And we do need those other relationships, to bounce off.
Hmm.
Not
Now,
necessarily in a
that's not to,
sexual way.
mhm. No, no. The relational orientation and what you're representing in your relationship, I define betrayal as a violation of the relational contract. So if you go into a relationship and say, I am only going to be sexual and romantic with you, then that's what you need to follow.
Yeah.
And if that's going to shift, you need to have a conversation about it before it shifts, not
After.
afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And that
that's
that happens a lot then, hey, in relationships. Dysfunctions is more the betrayal part. Would you say
to
that's a big
me,
part of
betrayal.
relationship breakdown?
I think so. And I don't know. I recognize every relationship is going to have some level of dysfunction. And dysfunction is disconnecting behaviors. All of us are human. We
Yeah.
have disconnecting stuff. And there are ways of handling that in a healthier way, which is acknowledging the disconnecting behaviors, working to be able to resolve them, and then like just being open about what you're going to do about it. So most of the time when people come to me, it's because there's been significant deception, because there's been a significant pattern of betrayal, usually over a period of years. I have a
Yeah.
lot of folks who come to me and there's been betrayal for decades and they didn't know about it.
Hmm.
And so they've just discovered it. And that's I think because of my specialties that's the majority of the clients I get.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this breakdown in relationships and society now, I mean, there's that old traditional contract, as you say, that was about land and passing on and I guess supporting one another for family, raising a family, really.
Mhm.
But that's shifted now, right? Like there's no longer the need for that necessarily.
Now it's more of an agreement because we want to spend time with somebody, which to me isn't bad or good. I actually really enjoy that. My husband is one of my favorite people, and I
Yeah,
decided to spend my life with him.
yeah,
And that's why I married him, not because I needed to have children and pass my land down to them. I mean, I have land, but we've bought.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I think
yeah.
we're in our fourth house.
Okay.
So, not quite the same
So it's
concept.
more because you actually really enjoy spending time with each other. And
Mhm.
that's what I'd sort of say is that soulmate sort of capacity, someone that you can really just bounce off and also understand each other and have your separate external relationships that don't break that contractual agreement that you might have. Hmm.
Absolutely. I've been married for 28 years and
Wow,
I'm never bored. He's fascinating and I love having conversations with him
that's cool.
and wouldn't trade it for the world. Now, that doesn't mean we never fight. It doesn't mean we get along perfectly. And it doesn't mean I don't need other people to talk to. So,
28 years. Flash forward to now, if you were single now,
mhm.
28 years ago age, do you think it'd be a different story as finding that relationship?
Huh. I don't think I've thought about it with that context. Um,
Because I know what a lot of people would be, well, what I'm thinking is, geez, I mean, that sounds so brilliant. 28 years, you love spending time with each other. And a lot of people are out there probably, gone through dating apps and dating and just man after man or woman after woman and just not finding that real connection. And I have my own theories as to why, but yeah, it's a change game.
do you think that in general, we've gotten more used to things being replaceable. Like we
Hmm.
throw things out instead of replacing them, or we replace them instead of fixing them. And it
Fixing them.
used to be that like refrigerators would last forever, and now we buy new ones when they break instead. So I think some of it is that. I also think we're being told that soulmates are something that they look different than what they are. And you look at Disney movies or you look at Hallmark uh, romance movies, and you're taught that happily ever after is how it ends, instead of being taught that that's how it begins. That okay, so you meet each other, you fall in love, you might feel butterflies in the stomach, you might feel the honeymoon, go through the honeymoon period. A lot of relationships do,
Yeah.
and then you hit your first fight, and then you hit the times when you have to really work through things. And my marriage has certainly not been perfect.
Yeah.
And when people ask me, like, how have you stayed married? So I'm like, well, both of us have really worked on it. And neither one of us, like, we haven't given up at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of that is related to it, continuing to work on our relationship, continuing to work on our connection to each other. And I don't want a lot of the people who walk into my office think that they've been doing that. And then let's say if we're talking about dyads, because a lot of the folks I work with, a lot of the relationships are couples, but I don't want to leave out polyamorous relationships in the conversation. But a lot of people will walk into my office and one part of the dyad will think that they have been working on it and have been throwing themselves into it while there has been a pattern of deception that's happening on the other side of the equation that was being hidden. And so I'm not trying, well, people will say like I don't even know what's real. I thought that both of us were in this for decades, and then I find out that they've been cheating on me for 30 years,
Mm.
and I don't even know what to do with this. I don't know what's real with it. So I'm not trying to downplay that, but working on it, working through
Well,
things, working on
working through
yourself.
things, but again, like you go back to that throwaway society, like that's just too hard. I can move on. I'll do something else. And it's not always easier, but sometimes it's
Mhm.
better too.
Yeah, it absolutely can be. It opens up all sorts. We can meet more people than we ever could.
Hmm.
Because if you go back to, well, I lived in one town, and I mean, like when I was younger, I read the Little House on the Prairie books, which it's a US series. It was written, I think, in the 1800s, and they actually traveled to a bunch of different towns because they moved west with the pioneer, like I think they were pioneers or something.
Yeah.
But usually you'll stay in one town and you'll know the same people, and the most you will ever travel is like 5 miles. And there's a limited number of people within that 5 mile
Yeah.
radius.
Yeah.
So therefore you have a limited number of people to pick from. Now we have, I mean, we can meet people all over the world and potentially connect to them. So there's a much larger pool of people, which means you could potentially find somebody who might be a better fit than somebody you would find within 5 miles.
Hmm.
But they're still going to be human, and you still need to work on the dysfunction.
Yeah. And whilst the world's open to us all at a much broader scale, there's also all the other information that comes through to us through that openness. And I think that's where we block ourselves from meeting new people, is because we've got this
Mhm.
set expectation about what we're going into it and what we want, rather than thinking that actually this is going to be a compromise and something that we have to work together to achieve. And it's not going to be straight away.
Absolutely. I have a friend who is in an arranged marriage, and I had the conversation with her. This was several years ago,
Yeah.
and asked, like, "Do you feel like you missed out on something?" And she said, "No, because everybody has to go into a relationship and make compromises, and I went in expecting it, so it was helpful."
Well, that's good. So do you think the tools available to people are just not there anyway to now work through these issues we have around strong relationships, sexuality, how that looks in a relationship?
I think we have more tools than we ever have, and at the same time,
That's true.
we tend to connect less than we ever have. And that's an interesting dichotomy to me. It
Right.
doesn't
Yeah,
sound like
yeah.
those two should coexist,
So we've got
but I
plenty of
think they
tools,
do.
plenty of information, but no understanding or no patience to use them.
Probably both. I would think we aren't taught patience anymore. Not the way that we used to have patience. And instead of having it forced on us now, um, I think we need to learn to have it,
Yeah.
which not necessarily a bad shift to learn to have it instead of be forced to.
Yeah, yeah. Sex in a relationship and sexuality. I feel that's changed significantly too in the recent decades, right? You can almost be anything you want these days, and it seems okay. I don't know if I'm okay with that, I'll be honest. Not that I care, like whatever your sexuality is, so be it. But having it thrown at us and thrown at our children as you could be anything, I think it creates a lot of confusion.
It can. I also think at the same time it creates more freedom to be able to identify what you like and what you don't like.
Hmm.
Um, so I think I get it's sort of like the dichotomy. I do know
Well, it's
there are
taken a
lots
total
of
shift,
different
hasn't it? From
labels.
old traditional man and woman relationships, long term, push through anything, contractual sort of arrangement to this other, hey, freedom, do whatever you want, let everyone be who they want to be. And I
To
don't,
some extent,
yeah.
that's also an old pattern too, though, because like if you look at the 1920s,
Hmm.
I think most generations have had a sexual rebellion. So the 1920s flappers, it was all about, oh, I'm going to be free and I'm going to be able to dress in sexy ways, and sexiness looked different then. If you shift to like the 1960s and the 1970s, that was certainly a sexual rebellion and free love. I've seen the pictures of that. I was born in 78, so
Right.
I don't remember the 70s and 60s. But we look at the 80s and Madonna and the pointy bras and all of the outfits that were part of the 80s. I think every single generation
Right.
has had their own sexual rebellion. So I think in
Okay.
this particular, in our world today, we are being able to adjust by looking at different labels and find ones that fit differently for people.
Hmm.
So that's my take on the adjustment through it. But I think it's something that's much older than we think it is.
Yeah, yeah, okay. That's well explained. Do you think it creates confusion with people around their sexuality and therefore impacts their ability to have quality relationships?
Um, I think it can create confusion. I also think it creates clarity, that it gives them permission to be able to think outside of the initial gender typical boxes
Yeah.
that were the only boxes available. Um, if you look at LGBTQ plus relationships, they've been around forever. We have you look at what's her name? Poet from Emily. Maybe it's not Emily. I There's a female poet who was from New England hundreds of years, a couple hundred years ago, and her poetry was written to another woman. Like, and then you look, there are pictures from like World War I that are people who, and letters from people who loved each other who were the same gender. So these relationships existed. And I think this is giving people room and space to be able to actually claim who they really are.
Hmm.
And to me, that it provides freedom.
Yeah.
And
So because society had this like
mhm,
conformity around that sexuality and people just hid from that and weren't allowed to truly self-express. So now we're seeing
that's my
more of that
opinion.
come out. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And there certainly has been hate crimes. There's if you look at just like sexual abuse, the
Hmm.
percentage of folks who have been sexually abused. So the reported ones, I think, are much lower than what's actually there.
Yeah.
In my experience, and again, I might be biased because of the field I'm in, but I think about 75 to 80% of females have experienced some level of sexual abuse or harassment in their life. And I think over 50% of males have experienced some level of sexual harassment. If you look at LGBTQ plus folks, it's almost 100%. So there has been a lot of pressure to fit within the binary gender roles.
Hmm.
There's a
Would you say
huge
70 to
cost.
75% of women have been somewhat sexual abused or harassed? What is the bare minimum? Like what would we define as the very low end sexual harassment or that would put them in that category?
Usually it is
When
forcing
when I
someone.
think of it, I think
Mhm.
of something
Yeah,
quite significant,
like
someone's
rape.
touched
Mhm.
rape. Yeah.
Rape would be one of the more extreme ones, but it is making somebody participate in sexual activity without their consent.
Right.
So whether that has to do with, it could be power dynamics or age, like a child does not have the capacity to be able to consent to an adult because of the power dynamics. I talked to some of my clients will have had, they'll come in and they'll say that they had a sexual relationship with a teacher when they were in high school, which would be like age 15, 16. And that because of the power dynamics, because of the potential consequences, if they had said no, that doesn't allow consent, which
Yeah.
means that would technically be abuse.
They're high
So,
figures.
mhm, yeah, they
Really
are.
high.
Hmm. Yep.
So going back to sexuality, is this something that we should be teaching, do you think, in schools from a young age, the very different types of genders, sexualities that you could experience? I don't know how it's done these days, really, but
I don't know the figures worldwide. I know in the US that not even of the 50 US states, not even all of them require sex ed. And the ones that require it do not require it to be biologically accurate, which
right.
to me doesn't make any sense. I think we should teach people what their bodies are and what they do. And I think we should teach basic things. As far as definitions are concerned, understanding that to me, it would be more important to teach relational contracts and to teach this is how you communicate. And if you're going to say you do something, then you do it. And this is how you set up boundaries and you communicate the boundaries with somebody
Right.
else that you might be
Makes
in a
sense.
relationship with.
Yeah.
And go figure out who you are and go figure out what you like. And we don't talk about sex, never mind what we're attracted to.
Hmm. So be okay with experiencing sex in your body, however it feels natural to you, teaching that, and then teaching the idea of when you're in a relationship, what that means for you and the other person.
Hmm. And consent, that if somebody else
Consent.
touches you or somebody else tries to have you do something, you don't have to do it. And
Yeah.
here are people that you can talk to if it happens. That's a conversation that uh, I regularly have with like my kids. My youngest is 13. So my kids are, I have six kids and they're 13 to
Wow.
23.
Bloody hell.
So,
Good on you.
but any like my friends' kids, anybody that not that I'm not having the conversations without their parents' consent.
Yeah.
If the topics come up, it's hey, if you know, if anybody touches you, then you know you can come and talk to us about it and we'll help you figure out what you'd like to do about it. And you don't have to let somebody touch you if you don't want them to.
Hmm.
And to me that's even basic. Like I don't post pictures of my kids on social media without their consent. So if I take a picture of us at Christmas, with because we do stockings in the US. So if I take a picture
Yeah.
of the stockings with my kids at Christmas, I don't post it on social media unless everyone in the picture says, yeah, you can go ahead and post that one.
Yeah. Well,
And that's a really basic form of consent. I
yeah.
think consent is vital.
Yeah. Role model there. Do you find in your field of work, with people that have been through past trauma, um, abuse, whatever it might be, do you find that people that go through that have a different perception of sexuality and who they're attracted to in their relationships?
Um,
Is it significant enough to notice or
I don't think it usually changes sexual orientation
hmm,
significantly. Um, that being said, it's a very individual sexual orientation, sexual arousal is a very individual topic. And I
yeah,
do know people who say the things I went through in childhood impacted my orientation. And so I'm not trying to disavow those, like each of us have our own experiences. Um, but to me, it has more to do with our shame around sex, with what we're willing to look at and what we're able to look at and what we feel like we have permission to look at and how we advocate for ourselves, and how we connect to ourselves and how we connect to others.
yeah, yeah. I see it more now, and again, I ask this question because I'm curious, but
Hmm.
bisexual people that are open about saying I'm bisexual, particularly women saying that, it seems like for me, it feels like it's too common now, and it seems almost trendy. Pansexual, I see that term thrown around more and more. Is it just trendy, or is it that they're actually just now comfortable and they don't have the shame and they're actually expressing themselves? I've got a
I think
follow-up
it
question to that
probably
too.
leans more towards, yeah, it leans more towards the second. Um, and again, there are huge amounts of abuse, and uh, there are huge consequences to people socially. And um, so, folks, I have a hard time believing that people would choose the react to say something and claim something that wasn't authentically themselves with the cost that they are paying to do so. Um, and so I know that one of the things
Yeah,
that's
okay.
made it into the news a lot recently are like trans individuals and trans affirming care. In the US, that's a pretty big thing for it's there are laws that are being passed and being unpassed and or reversed. And it's interesting to me that you look at other surgeries like knee replacement surgery or something, and the percentage of people who wish that they hadn't done it afterwards. I don't know what the numbers are. I don't specialize in knee replacement surgery. I actually don't specialize in any surgery at all. I'm a
Right.
therapist. But the people who regret having surgery as far as gender reassignment surgery, it is like 1 to 2%, which is the smallest of any surgery ever that I am aware of. And so the amount of what they face, the rage, the hate, the pressure, the consequences. A lot of the folks who come out as LGBTQ plus are rejected by their families. They lose their religious organizations. A lot of times they'll be rejected by those. The consequences that they face for saying, "Hey, this is who I am." I I just can't picture that they're doing that just because it's a fad. I think it has to be more, I actually see myself in this and it's real.
Well, that's going through some significant changes around your sexuality, as opposed to just
Yeah.
stating that I'm gay or lesbian or
Yeah.
bisexual, right?
Orientation.
Like that's pretty
Yep.
huge. And it'd be interesting to see the studies around that, because if you believe something so strongly and you go through sex change operations, it's going to be very hard for you to then show that, oh, I actually regret having that done. I feel like you'd want to hold on to not expressing that you regret it, regardless if you regret it or not, because you've made a big
Because
decision
of how much you paid. Yeah.
and there's a lot of
Paid
pride involved in
emotionally.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a
It's
different sort
possible.
of topic, but
Yep.
yeah, sexuality. Do you see sex like relationship? I guess you deal with both men and women relationships,
Absolutely. Yep.
women and women relationships.
I deal with any relationships, and I deal with females who have betrayed and females who have been betrayed and males who have betrayed and males who have been betrayed
Yeah.
and non-binary folks who have gone through both. So anybody.
Is there something that you see more commonly now than you have in the past over the years of doing your work that's coming through
Um,
that's just like quite, wow, that's interesting?
hmm, something recently that has shifted. Um,
Like more same-sex relationship counseling or
I have not seen I have seen more folks whose children have come out. That's not necessarily the folks who come into my office for their relational work. But my
do you
office is
deal with the
located in
parents as
Dallas,
well?
Texas. I work with anybody who has issues processing through uh, like I've had parents who come to me because there's been betrayal within their relationship, and then they're also addressing other things that come up because I address whatever's coming up.
Right.
So I think I've had more parents in the last 5 years come and process with me their kids coming out as LGBTQ plus than I have seen previously. Um, and some of that is Texas is a fairly conservative state in the US, one of the most conservative. So I don't think I have quite as many LGBTQ plus folks in Texas as I would in other areas of the US or possibly other areas in the world.
Hmm.
Um, and that may just be that we were talking about the topic of orientation. So that might be what's coming to my mind.
Yeah.
I think I have I think it in our field, the majority of the resources for betrayal and infidelity are geared towards heterosexual couples where the man has betrayed and the woman has been betrayed. And one of the shifts I'm seeing, which to me is very helpful, is to recognize that it is not just males who betray, and it is not just females who are betrayed, and it isn't just in heterosexual marriages. And I know that's been a shift in the studies that have come out recently too, that almost 100% of the studies prior to maybe 10 years ago focused on genital contact with people outside of heterosexual marriages, and it was the male who had betrayed and the female who had been betrayed. And there are
Yeah.
almost no resources for males who have been betrayed, and very few resources for females who have betrayed and who struggle with problematic patterns. So that's a trend I've seen. Um, that's been fairly recent.
What, shifting the other way, you mean?
We're seeing that there are females who have betrayed too, and that there needs to be resources for females who are struggling with problematic sexual behaviors and males who have
Hmm.
been betrayed, and that it matters. This is something that affects people whether or not they are in like legal marriages.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see more relationship breakdowns in heterosexual couples, same-sex couples, second-time couples? Like, is there? Because I have heard some interesting statistics, but again, I don't know them, so I'll just be blurting out figures.
Um, I know that divorce rates in heterosexual couples have increased over the last several
Hmm.
decades. And part of that is the lack of rights that females had. So it has to do with more choice.
Yeah.
Um, I know in the US, females couldn't even have a credit card in their own name until 1978. So that makes it, if you don't have the ability to financially support yourself, then it makes it very difficult to choose
Yeah.
to end a marriage.
Yeah. Okay. It
um,
makes sense. Yeah.
so um, I think I'm trying to think of, I am not off the top of my head, I'm not seeing a dramatic difference between, let's say, lesbian couples, gay couples, heterosexual couples. I do see where females have betrayed, the relationships are significantly more likely to end. And where males have been the one, if it's heterosexual couples, if males are the ones who betray, the relationships usually last, like almost 90% of the time. And if females are the ones who have betrayed, the relationship usually ends about 90% of the time. So it's a very dramatic difference between those
Hmm.
two.
Is that based on the
And that's
emphasis
been
that a man and woman place on sex?
um what I in conversations that I've had with other clinicians who specialize in the field, some of it is I I see males who have been betrayed are more likely to react strongest to physical acts of betrayal. Females who have been betrayed are more likely to react strongly to emotional acts of betrayal. So,
Yeah.
for example, if I have a couple who comes into my office and the male has betrayed and he has utilized the services of 700 sex workers, his significant other might say, how many of them did you see more than once? Because she's looking for the emotional connection. Did you have a favorite? Did you have somebody you built a relationship with? And that doesn't say that the 700 sex workers is something that they wouldn't have to process and
Yeah.
that wouldn't be a huge betrayal. If I have a male who has been betrayed who comes into my office and his female significant other had multiple affairs, and let's say most of them are online, his question might be, how many did you meet up with in person and have sex with? And that will be what hits the hardest.
Yeah.
Now,
That makes
every single
sense.
person will have their own thing, but
Yeah. That
that's what
makes
I
sense to
see.
me.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's something I've seen.
So what can we do, men or women today looking to get into a relationship? What are the best keys to success?
Getting to know yourself and learning to communicate. So you're identifying your own emotions, your own needs, becoming somebody that you really like. So
Hmm.
Emily Nagoski is a sex educator, and I think she has 4 TED Talks and several books that have come out. And one of the things that she says is the key to a healthy sex life, or A happy sex life is confidence and joy. Confidence is knowing what's true, and joy is loving what's true. And to me, that's life in general. It's not just a sex life. So the key to a
Knowing what's
happy
true
life,
and loving what's true.
we know who we are and we love who we are.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we also learn to be able to connect with ourselves, communicate with ourselves, and then we learn how to connect and communicate within relationships as well. And if we are able to connect and communicate, to identify our emotions, identify our needs, communicate those in healthy ways, then that maximizes the chance of our connection working.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm reading a book now actually that talks about that first section, is talking about knowing yourself first and having comfort with who you are and joy with who you are as the first step to healthier relationships. So that's brilliant.
Well, I'm glad we're reading stuff that reflects the same thing, because to me that's one of my favorite quotes.
Interesting conversation. Thank you for coming on the show today, Laney. I'm sure there's plenty more we could talk about, perhaps another time. I will stick the links to your work in the show notes as well, but what can people do to reach out to you?
If they're interested in my books or my handouts are all available for free online, connectedrecoverytraining.com. The links to buy the books are there too. There are booklets on there as well. And if you're interested in working with me, I work with folks in the US, and that's knowltoncounseling.com.
Perfect. Lovely. Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy day. 6 children. Wow. Good on you. And thank you for your work you're doing. You shared some good insights today, so I really appreciate it.
It was wonderful to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Guys, check it out at thehiddenwhy.com. Until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon. Okay, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in this week to this interview. I hope you enjoyed the conversation we had. Make sure you check it out at thehiddenwhy.com for the show notes and links to our guest. And if you have any comments, any suggestions for the show, please make sure you reach out as well. Also, would like to just ask a favor. If you do like what you're listening to, if you love what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe. Whether you're listening to this on iTunes, wherever it might be, subscribe to the podcast so you can stay up to date with all the latest episodes. And some exciting changes happening this year at The Hidden Why, including the launch of our new website, which will be updated very soon. So watch this space for that, guys. And once again, live more fully, have more meaning, find more joy. We'll see you around the next interview.